I'm just kind of ready for the next chapter and a new challenge in my life. But I think the reason I decided to announce it when I did was just to have that closure.
Caitlin Clark, the towering women's basketball star, has made headlines recently for her candid thoughts about her head coach, Stephanie White. And let's just say, they weren't flattering. Normally reserved in interviews, Clark carefully chooses her words, knowing how easily they can be magnified in the media. That's why her sudden revelation about a major red flag she sees in White shocked so many. Was she misunderstood? Or did she deliberately pull back the curtain on a growing tension? Let's break down Caitlin's revelation, her relationship with Stephanie, and why it has everyone talking. Like every athlete at the top of her game, Caitlin Clark never had anything handed to her. She clawed her way to the top, becoming the most coveted women's basketball prospect in the United States, signing big endorsement deals, and keeping her composure under immense pressure. With a strong support system of family and basketball legends guiding her, one figure has always stood out in her professional journey: Stephanie White. White isn't just any coach. She's a legend in her own right, a former star who played primarily as a shooting guard but could slide into the forward spot when needed. Over the years, she's earned respect as both a player and a coach. Yet despite Clark's admiration for her resume, their relationship hasn't always been smooth. On the court, Clark's instincts sometimes clash with White's technical approach. Clark's dominance in college was undeniable. Standing nearly 6 feet 4 inches, she could overwhelm opponents with her size, skill, and sheer willpower. But when she turned pro, she quickly learned the WNBA was a different beast. Suddenly, she wasn't just playing against other young women. She was battling seasoned professionals with 5, 10, even more years of experience at the highest level. To thrive in that environment, Clark needed more than natural talent. She needed refinement, structure, and a coach who could help her elevate. That's where Stephanie White entered the picture. White wasn't the Fever's first choice at the start of Clark's pro career. Christy Sides was the team's coach when Clark arrived, and Sides had a strong reputation for player development. But after a disappointing season, Indiana parted ways with her in November 2024, turning to White as the new leader. The decision was bold but calculated. White, after all, had been part of the coaching staff that captured the WNBA title in 2012 and had more than proven her basketball IQ. Management believed her experience would be essential in guiding a young Fever squad back to relevance, especially with rookies like Clark and Aaliyah Boston expected to shoulder the franchise's future. White walked into a locker room filled with talent and ego. Managing 2 rookies as the faces of the team was no small challenge, but White's confidence and pedigree gave her credibility from day one. Interestingly, Clark had been a vocal supporter of White even before she became her coach. During speculation about White's hiring, Clark publicly praised her, calling her a trailblazer and admiring her basketball mind. Clark noted how she followed White's work with the Connecticut Sun, enjoyed her commentary during college broadcasts, and had positive interactions with her at shootarounds. That admiration made Clark's later comments about a red flag all the more surprising. She had once defended White relentlessly, especially when her own rookie struggles painted her as a disappointment to some. In those first games, Clark's assist numbers weren't as high as expected for a number 1 draft pick point guard, and critics pounced. Social media picked apart her body language, her attitude, and her adjustment to the league. Through it all, Clark praised White's leadership and knowledge. But tension was inevitable. Clark, a generational scorer and competitor, is wired to push boundaries, while White, a seasoned tactician, emphasizes discipline and execution. Their partnership has been both productive and rocky, a mix of admiration and friction. Clark respects White's history and acknowledges her insight, but she's also unafraid to speak her mind when something feels off. That's the dynamic now under the spotlight. Did Clark's recent revelations signal deeper issues between star and coach? Or was it simply the honesty of a young player still learning how to balance candor with media responsibility? Either way, Caitlin Clark's words carry weight, and when she points out a red flag, the basketball world listens.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really bother me. I think it's just what comes with it. And growing up, my mom always said, people want to see you fail.
On May 16th, 2024, Stephanie White was asked about Caitlin Clark's first 2 games with the Indiana Fever. The questions were sharp, almost impatient, with many already criticizing Caitlin's performance. Stephanie didn't flinch. "Guys, chill out. She's going to be fine. It's 2 games in. Are you kidding me? She's a student of the game. She got better every year. You're not going to just absorb all of the new information that's coming at you in 2 games." It was a firm, public defense of Caitlin. And in that moment, you could already sense the bond forming between the rookie sensation and the coach who would eventually shape so much of her early professional career. Caitlin had felt Stephanie's support long before they ever officially teamed up. But the bigger question is, how much of that support did she continue to enjoy once they were working side by side? Meeting her hero. There's a saying in sports, never meet your heroes, because it rarely lives up to the dream. Caitlin Clark didn't believe in that. When Stephanie White took over as head coach in 2024, Caitlin was thrilled. She'd already admired White from afar, whether it was her work calling college games, coaching the Connecticut Sun, or her long-standing reputation as a brilliant basketball mind. At first, Caitlin thought she had hit the jackpot. Here was the coach who would both nurture and challenge her. But almost immediately, she realized something important. Stephanie White wasn't a sycophant. She didn't coddle her players. Respect wasn't demanded through flattery. It was earned through work, honesty, and toughness. After their first training session together, Caitlin knew she was dealing with someone different. White freed her up to take more shots, encouraged her to take risks, and pushed her to expand her game beyond the highlight passes and deep threes. Scoring mattered just as much as flair, and Stephanie made sure Caitlin never forgot that. The results came quickly. Caitlin delivered an all-time great rookie season, capped by winning Rookie of the Year. But Caitlin also knew year 2 would be different. Defenses were adjusting. Opponents were studying every move. She couldn't just coast on what made her dominant in college. She would need to evolve, and luckily, she had a coach willing to push her in ways she hadn't been pushed before. White's coaching philosophy. One of Stephanie's first focuses was Caitlin's body mechanics. At 6'+ with a frame still adjusting to the physical demands of the WNBA, Caitlin couldn't afford to let small details slide. White emphasized low center of gravity, balance, and learning how to use her body as a weapon instead of a liability. It was grueling work. Unlike her previous coach, Christy Sides, who leaned heavily on encouragement and praise, White demanded accountability at every turn. Yes, she praised Caitlin's brilliance, but she was equally quick to point out flaws and weaknesses. For Caitlin, who thrived on constant growth, that duality was both exhausting and energizing. The two developed a rhythm. Practices were intense. Film sessions were blunt. But Caitlin's game steadily improved, particularly around the rim and with her mid-range floater. For a while, it looked like the partnership was exactly what both the Fever and Caitlin needed. Then came June 15, 2025. The injury. Caitlin Clark suffered a groin injury that sidelined her for an extended stretch. For a player who prided herself on durability and consistency, it was a devastating blow. On X, she expressed her frustration and disappointment, admitting how difficult it was to watch from the sidelines while her team battled without her. Behind the scenes, questions began to surface. Some sources close to Caitlin suggested that White's intense training regimen may have pushed her too hard. In college, and even during her rookie year, Caitlin had never struggled with major injuries. Now, suddenly, she was sidelined, and the whispers grew louder. Still, Caitlin refused to use the injury as an excuse. Instead, she continued training as best as she could, focusing on rehabilitation while remaining locked in from the bench. During games, she studied every play, every reaction from her coach, and every mistake from her teammates. She wanted to learn, even if she couldn't be on the floor. In one late-season game, with 5 minutes and 35 seconds left in the fourth quarter, Stephanie White was hit with a technical foul. Rather than sulking, Caitlin lit up. She stood, high-fived her coach, and smiled. The intensity inspired her. For Caitlin, who had collected her own fair share of technicals, it was a reminder that White's fire wasn't personal, it was competitive. And in that moment, it bonded them even further. Cracks beneath the surface. But as strong as the public moments looked, not everything was perfect behind the curtain. The Fever's record reflected inconsistency. Under Christie's sides, Indiana had looked like a team on the rise, balanced even in their struggles. Under White, the 21-20 season felt underwhelming for a roster many expected to break through. Caitlin noticed the difference. She appreciated White's insistence on her working on floaters, mid-range shots, and left-hand finishes. But she also felt that the team's overall system left much to be desired. Compared to the previous season, ball movement seemed stagnant, spacing broke down too often, and the offense didn't always play to their collective strengths. When healthy, Caitlin masked some of those issues with her brilliance. Without her, they became glaring. The podcast revelation during her recovery, Caitlin joined Sue Bird on a podcast. It was meant to be lighthearted, a chance for her to talk about her journey, her rehab, and her outlook on the game. But in between laughs and stories, Caitlin made comments that set the basketball world buzzing. She didn't outright criticize Stephanie White, but she hinted at red flags she noticed in her coach's style. It was subtle but sharp. She acknowledged White's genius and competitive fire but questioned whether the approach truly worked for a young, developing roster. The internet did what it always does. Clips went viral. Headlines blared that Caitlin Clark had called out her coach. Some argued she was simply being honest, sharing the realities of a player-coach relationship in a high-pressure environment. Others accused her of planting seeds of discord and undermining White's authority. Where do they stand? At the heart of it, Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White share an undeniable bond. White believed in her when critics doubted her. She pushed her when others would have let her coast. And she held her to a standard few rookies had ever been asked to meet. But the same intensity that made White a respected coach may also be the very thing Caitlin now views with caution. Injuries, tough losses, and high expectations have shifted the narrative. What once looked like a perfect partnership now feels complicated, layered with both admiration and concern. Caitlin Clark is a generational talent. Stephanie White is a proven coach with years of experience. Together, they could build something special in Indiana. But as Caitlin's comments suggest, this story is still being written. The question isn't whether Caitlin respects her coach, it's whether she fully believes Stephanie White is the one to guide her through the most important years of her career. Because when a superstar hints at cracks in the foundation, the entire league pays attention.